draped over his shoulder like he hadn't heard a word. He opened the fridge, grabbed some juice, and said, "So, house to ourselves, huh?" Mom gave him a look. "Don't burn the place down." "Wouldn't dream of it," he said with that familiar grin, eyes flicking toward me for just a second too long. They left around noon. Mom hugged me twice and reminded Noah not to forget the trash. Different. That word hung between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. We sat quietly after that, the movie flickering in front of us, the space between us smaller than before. Every few minutes our shoulders brushed. Neither of us moved away. It wasn't awkward, just real. Like two people remembering what it felt like to be king. The quiet thick with unspoken thoughts. Every sound seemed louder than it should have been. The clink of the mugs, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards. I wanted to say something, anything, to make it normal again. But I couldn't find the right words. Instead, I got up first. "I'm gonna shower," I said quietly. He nodded without looking at me. In the bathroom, I leaned against the door and let the sound of the water fill the silence. My pulse was still racing. I didn't even know why. Maybe it wasn't about anger or guilt. Maybe it was just everything we hadn't said finally catching up to us. Later, we sat outside on the porch. The night was warm, the air buzzing with crickets. He handed me a beer without saying a word. The stars overhead looked impossibly far away. After a while, he spoke. "You've always felt different to me," he said. It was about release. About finally dropping the walls we'd built around everything we never dared to face. He reached out, placing a hand on my shoulder, a steady, grounding touch. The kind that said, "I'm here." I understand, for a long while neither of us moved. The house behind us was dark, quiet, but deep down I knew better. Something between us had shifted. Something we couldn't take back. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything we couldn't say. I wanted to ask him. I wanted to grab him and say, "Tell me it mattered. Tell me it wasn't just the night or the silence or the lawn knowingness." But I didn't. Because, honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to hear. Later, when the house was quiet again, I found myself standing outside his door. I didn't knock. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, rubbing the back of his neck like he was trying to shake something off. When he looked up and saw me, he didn't speak. He just stared, like he'd been waiting for me all day. I stepped inside and gently closed the door behind me. We stood there in silence, thick, heavy, charged. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Because I don't know what to make of any of this, and maybe your words might help me understand mine.
Thank you for being here.